Welcome to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast, the show designed to help professional moms like you empower your well-being, strengthen family bonds, and excel in your career while thriving your way. I'm your host, Kelly Berthold, a fellow professional mom, licensed clinical social worker, wellness educator, advocate, and coach. And I created this podcast to provide a space where we can connect foundational principles of well-being with real-life, actionable insights that help us feel more connected to ourselves and others. If you're juggling life, family, and career while seeking balance and authentic connection, this podcast is for you. Each episode, we'll hear from our neighbors, uncover the extraordinary in ordinary life, find patterns that help us recognize opportunities for well-being, and get practical, fundamental tips to thrive in your wellness, relationships, parenting, and professional life. You're the expert on you, and I'm here to help you thrive your way. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's jump in. So hi, welcome to Know Your Fundamentals. Today I have Dan McKenna with us, who is known as Coach Dan in the community. He is owner and director, as well as founder of Hoopstars. Today, he's going to talk to us a little bit about his entrepreneurial experience getting into and creating Hoopstars, that life can throw us some curveballs, and what do you make when life throws you some challenges and things that you don't necessarily expect. So welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining the show today.
No, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Dan, why don't you kind of introduce us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what brought you to even doing Hoopstars?
Sure. My name is Dan McKenna. Like Kelly said, I actually played basketball here for Penn State from 1990 to 94. And then I'm from New Jersey originally, and my wife and I got married in 2001. And then just sort of after my son was born in 2005, we just sort of kind of got tired of the grind. I mean, we literally, if you didn't get out of your house by 7:00, you were stuck in 2 hours of traffic and then rushing home. And then it just wasn't worth it. So my in-laws were here in State College, and we decided to take a leap of faith and just moved back into the area. My wife had a lead on a job. I didn't really have a job, but we always loved Penn State. We loved coming back to visit her family. And so we got back here, I guess in 2008. We moved here, and I worked in the health and fitness industry, and I was able to get a job eventually part-time, then full-time at the YMCA. Was there for 10 years. I had my second son, who was born in 2012. We found out when he was about 18 months, 2 years old, that he was on the autism spectrum. So that was sort of an unexpected curveball. And then we started therapy after therapy, and it was just, we had a crazy schedule of taking him places. I had some flexibility with my job at the Y, but it was just, if I can fast forward, I guess, to when he was 6/5, going into his kindergarten year, which would have been 2018. He did a summer program that was only 3 hours a day, and it was just getting to the point where it just didn't really work. Running around, picking him up, dropping him off, staying at work late. It was just not really a lifestyle either of us wanted to live. We also then found out later that year, well, I guess if I could backtrack, that fall of 2018, we just were chronically getting calls. He probably went to school maybe an average of 2 days a week. We were having he's nonverbal still, but we were having health issues. We just couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I was getting calls from school. We were you just hear him screaming in the background, be breaking your heart. So something had to give. So that fall, I ended up just leaving my job, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but I know, family first, we had to care for him. And so it probably went only about a week of some uncertainty of if I was just going to have to take some job just for something or do a second shift type of thing. So we can trade off, which I know families do have to do. I remember because my cousin got married up in Massachusetts, and I think that was the first time we were away from him ever overnight, not locally. But anyway, it was I was kind of stressed out. It was a nice break just to kind of not think about things for a little bit. But that Monday morning we came back, and I think I just took Kyle to school, and my wife called me and she's like, I have an idea. And I was like, what? And she was like, you should do soccer shots for basketball. So I had worked, to backtrack again, I had basically done the basketball program at the Y for about 10 years. So it wasn't something I was unfamiliar with. So I was like, wow, that's a good idea. So I went over and actually met with my in-laws are still here, and my father-in-law sort of was my silent partner, kind of getting the business off the ground, just from all the paperwork and things you had to fill out along those lines. I think this was like a Monday. And then I think the next day, Penn State, through their small business development center, they had like an intro on how to start a small business. So I signed up and we went to the class. Turns out the guy that was teaching the class was a volunteer coach of mine from the Y. So again, like you see a lot of families now that I do currently, but even when I was at the Y, it was a lot of families and kids that ran through our basketball program that I had just made connections with. So yeah, it was just kind of ironic, I guess. Then as of Thanksgiving, I had a chance to do like a trial class, and by that winter, which would have been 2019 January, we were up and running and started the Hoopstars basketball company. But there was a lot of I guess cold calling or just trying to figure some stuff out in the beginning. But yeah, my first class, we had just 12 people. I had no website. I had no way of communicating other than just Facebook, but somehow people found out about me, and then rest is history, I guess.
Wow. So kind of like, that was like the fast track history of everything that you've been going through, that kind of led up to you having this business now. And what are all the different facets of your business that you have currently?
So yeah, right. So initially I had just done like a preschool basketball program. So it was like ages 3 to 5. And that was my first class. In fact, my first class, if anyone's familiar in the area with Park Forest Baptist Church, they have a carpeted basketball court in their like worship hall. And I was driving by there, and I remember my older son having to do CCD there. And I remember when I was driving past there, I'm like, there's a basketball court inside that place, I think. So I just pulled up, parked there, and rang on the doorbell, and some woman answered, and I talked fast, and I apologized. But when she answered the door, I was like, and she was probably like, what is this guy doing? But she let me in, and I saw the space, and then it was available for rent. And I did 2 demo classes before I started in January, and I had a grand total of 0 come for the first one and 1 person come for the second one. So they called me and offered to not charge me for my first round of classes. I think they just felt sorry for me because no one showed up. But so my very first class, they have this big worship basketball court, but they told me like, I think the day before that I couldn't use it because they had some conflict they forgot about. And upstairs is like this teen hangout room, which has like, it's not much bigger than maybe someone's living room. I had 12 people coming in. There were like couches, and I was like, oh my God. And you had to like go through this labyrinth to get there. And I was like, no one's ever going to come back. But they did. And I still have, I think, at least 1 or 2 kids from that first class that are still, and multiple families from that first class that are still involved. So yeah, so that was my first sort of program, that preschool basketball. And then that was a class in the evening that I call public classes, so anyone can sign up for. In the fall, like Thanksgiving, right before the new year, I started a class at a local preschool, and then I ran that one as well. So I had 2 classes running. One that was a preschool, it's an add-on, which Kelly's son does. And then I had that one in the evening, and then I offered another one during the day in the morning, but I only had 3 people sign up for that. But within weeks, that class went from 3 to it was full. So eventually as you start doing things, people talk about you, and they talk you up, and word of mouth has been the biggest probably thing for me over the years. After that model, I remember I had done some summertime came, and I decided to try some summer camps. I ran just 1 or 2 of those. They were kind of small and modest, but it was a start. And then the fall, I was able to get in a couple more preschools. I also had that early spring, I was able to get into the SEAL program with State College. And that was big for me because that was a way to get exposure. You get rotated by the different schools. And I was talking to Kelly earlier, and I talked about, if you've seen Pursuit of Happiness, I remember exactly where I was when I got that call. I was at Circleville Park with my son, and I got an email from the SEAL director who was wanting to meet with me. And it was like, thank you. Cause I was just basically cold calling, emailing, just looking up people. And what I didn't realize in the beginning was like, you have to try and get face to face, because someone would say yes. And I would or like someone would answer the phone. I didn't know what to say. I was so shocked that they either would take my call or it's like when you answer the telemarketing thing by accident. So I quickly learned how to like slow down and kind of almost made like a script. So if I was able to get someone to actually, on the phone, I was able to explain, because it's hard to explain when you're just pure concept. But then next I realized it's like on the phone is all well and good, but you got to try and meet. You just need to get your foot in the door. But after that, into that fall of, I guess, 2019, I had more classes running. I had added an older model too, because I had some parents that had done my current class the first couple sessions. Then it kind of becomes a little, I don't want to say shticky, but if you've done it, you try and vary it. But they had a kiddo that was an older 5 that wasn't going to kindergarten yet. So I decided to add a second class model where we go kindergarten through second grade, where we transition from more play into actually real basketball, where we use real basketballs and we shoot at a lower, but a real hoop. And that was a good idea that I didn't know I would do, but it was a kind of like a Hoopstars 2.0, or just a natural progression. And then going into that winter, I ran a league, a little like a 3-on-3 league, which has become one of my biggest programs we run now. And that, that was modest and small. We had 44 kids that signed up for that year one. We have 132 currently in that program now. And I could have taken more. I just didn't have enough room. And if we're looking at the timeline, we're in January, February of 2020, and we all know what is about to happen. So COVID came, and honestly, I believe this may sound weird, but COVID, I think, was one of the best things that sort of happened for me. Obviously, everyone was on the break, but when people wanted to return, I think people were looking for something to do, and they were looking for normalcy. And I feel like I was able to provide that for the people that were comfortable and willing to venture out.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of like, I was here, and then I followed where that took me. It led me to this next moment that opened up a new door. But before like talking about some of the development of these programs, you started where it presented to be the most obvious starting point, a church that had a basketball court that you knew of, and you started and you asked about it there. And then after that, you pursued other opportunities after you had one open door. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of getting started, and then you just have to, one thing I like to say is you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like that's, I had no idea, honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't, I didn't think I'd ever be running a business. And then you definitely make more mistakes than you do things right in the beginning, but you definitely learn from them. I did, when I was getting ready to get started, backtracking again, I'm sorry, I tend to jump all over the place, but there was a local, along with the SBDC here, the Small Business Development Center at Penn State, there's a bunch of incubators, launch boxes here in State College, but in Bellefonte, there's a Springboard, and they ran a startup competition, and my wife found that. Again, I think she found that, but anyway, I actually entered it and won. There was 3 prizes. I won second place, but I won $2,000. And along with that, you won, like, there was a chance they had different marketing people you could talk with. There was a web developer who actually helped me get my website up and running. And those were all things that was helpful. He's been great. It's 329 Design, Troy Weston. He's been great in terms of getting me help started, and then helping with a lot of questions I've had that he didn't charge me anything for. I do all my web design myself, and that's a full-time job sometimes in itself. But yeah, so it's just you have to have breaks along the way, and that was definitely one of them. Got me some chance to get sort of a little bit of press. I did get some write-ups early on too, which was helpful. This was sort of on Facebook was out, but Instagram wasn't. So I don't think it was back then, or I didn't have an account back then. So this is sort of the beginning stages of just trying to get your name out there. But yeah, so I mean, it's gotten to the point now where every morning we go to a different preschool. I have a small little part-time team with me who are incredible. I basically, I've grown to the point where I couldn't do everything myself. And the one person I had met who helps me in the mornings, Jessica Manelli, like I met her during COVID because like a lot of people else, you had to pivot. I had no, income source. So I decided to offer like pod type home school, go to people's houses type of thing. And then actually I didn't have a huge amount, but she was one of them. And I went to a couple other families' houses and just were able to sort of keep doing something. I just needed it for my own mental health, I think, because between my wife being home, having to teach my special needs son and my older son being home, like I was almost kicked out of my own house. Like I had nowhere to go. So it was nice to have a little bit of normalcy for me to do something just to stay active. But I tried to keep posting stuff and stay relevant as best I could. But I think once things started to slowly open back up and people were willing to let us back in or me back in, I honestly feel like, I think people just were looking for a chance to be, like what things were, I mean, even though they weren't in the beginning when we still masked up and did all our precautions and stuff, but it gave kids a chance to be kids again, which I think was important.
Yeah. And I think it's an incredibly important resource in the community, and also like community connection. It is something that we just crave. The parents crave it for their kids to have that normalcy. They crave that connection, even if it's just being around sometimes other people. It feels like that's like the semblance of community. But even kind of like taking it back a little bit, sometimes I think some of the eye-opening perspective when an entrepreneur or just someone's doing something that they kind of have to create their own path and it's not so obvious, is the mindset work. Even if you don't necessarily know that you were doing it, but having a certain type of mindset that allowed you the opportunity to get through discomforts, especially during the most critical, difficult times of navigating and building a business that can just exist. So businesses can't, if they don't make money after so much time, it just becomes a hobby. So like, but also for livelihood's sake, it's like you got to make an income, and you don't necessarily like know when that's going to start happening. Can you talk a little bit about what was helpful for you, especially in the beginning, and maybe also especially during the pandemic? Maybe the pandemic, it was a little bit different, that you had enough experience at that point that it wasn't that you wouldn't be able to get it back. It was more of a matter of time until you could get it back, because you experience first. I went through the hard stuff of just building it. So can you talk a little bit about like, the beginning stages of your experience and the mental processes that were maybe the strengths, and also the mental process that were, sometimes defeating, or that you were uncertain or scared? Can you talk to both of those hands?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just, you got to put your head down and you got to just keep, like grinding, for lack of a better word. Like I just kept trying to get in the door with anyone who would like answer. And the places that I wouldn't answer my calls or wouldn't respond to any emails, if you are patient, it was interesting for me to see, like, 3 years in, and then you get a call or an email from someone that you just, you sent them 20 emails, I may be exaggerating, and called them 10 times.
Maybe
And
you're
then,
not.
yeah, and they wouldn't answer, you know what I mean? So for whatever reason, like either your people that were attending that program or whatever asked for you or mentioned it, or they hear about you. So somewhere or the other, they did hear good things about me. To me, I put everything in, like, if you know me, like I am high energy. I'm almost over the top, to the point where sometimes where I have to be told, if I have a reserved kiddo in class, I may need to dial it down, because I sometimes I'm also 6'11". I'm on the taller side, so I can be a little intimidating just from size wise, but I am me. Like I'm bring it. I'm all in, and I put that into my business. And I guess not over the top, but sometimes I have to be even told by my own family to dial it down. But like I said, I put everything into what I do, and I think that reflects in our business and who we are, and the experience that the kiddos get. Like, it's almost like being a performer. Like, the class starts and it's like lights on and you're off and you're putting on a show. And I always say, like, when you see, mom and dad come to class, you're doing things well. When you see grandma and grandpa come with mom and dad, you know you're doing something very well, because you're just kind of, more people are seeing you. But I mean, from a getting started perspective, you have to, basically look at, like, I needed to come up with a curriculum. I needed to come up with a business model. I needed to basically, be prepared. Once I got the opportunity to present myself, it had to be perfect. You know what I mean? In my head. So I got into ABC daycare, and the first demo class, I went to the wrong place. There was 2 of them, and I was freaking out because that was one of the places it took me forever to get in. So I was like speeding across town to get to the other location. So yeah, another, I guess, funny story, another preschool I got into after years of trying to get in. We play a lot of red light, green light, and I was backing up. And I swear, no, I don't know if you see this column behind me, but my butt went through the wall at the preschool. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, it just took me 3 years to get in here. And I literally put my butt through the wall. And not only was it embarrassing, but the kids for about a month later were like, remember when you put your butt through the wall? So anyway, so mentally, I think you just have to have a strong will, and you have to be able to not take no for an answer. I know those are like cliche-ish, but you just have to eventually someone will say yes. But what I learned is, once they say yes, you have to be prepared to go in and show them what you can do or what you are going to do. I think during the pandemic, what I think is, I was frustrated because we were at the point, I remember right before that, we did like a little Hoopstars day at Penn State men's basketball. We had a pretty good turnout. I just remember seeing like all these kids wearing their Hoopstars shirts. I don't know, and not all these, maybe it was 40 to 50 kids, but we kind of took over, like, if you're in the BJC, kind of took over one of the, like, the little, we were kind of blocking traffic and people couldn't get through. And it was like claustrophobically awesome. Like, I don't know if that's an expression, but I was like, I can't believe this is like working, And then I think spring break, like a couple weeks later, everything got shut down. It was frustrating, sure, obviously, but everyone was sort of in the same boat in the beginning. I think I just tried to keep my connections up and keep, in conversation with the places I had been, realizing that no one was going back anytime soon. But I just, it had been a lot of work to kind of get to that point of being up and running, but I didn't want to lose anything at that point, I guess. But, and like I said, I feel like, as long as we put the safety precautions in place when we restarted, I feel like the people that were ready to come back did. And then that, like I said, I think that break just gave people normalcy and a chance to feel like, where we weren't out of the woods yet. I think people were it gave them, especially the kids. I mean, there's a lot of isolation and things along those lines. So it was nice for kids to see each other, and that type of thing. But I mean, I think from the mental side of things, like you were asking, I think it's just a matter, you have to have a strong will. I think, I don't know what the statistic is for how many small businesses don't make it. But for me, it wasn't really ever an option. You know what I mean? I didn't intend to do this. So like I said, it was kind of an oops, but I get to do what I love every day. I mean, I hang out with little kids and I'm probably right there with them. But I mean, I don't, like I said, I just love my job, and I don't think that's rare in these days. So, and unfortunate, and now, I probably can't go anywhere without seeing somebody I know to some degree. So, and especially over the summer, I don't really work as much over the summer, and I go to the pool a lot, and it's almost to the point where sometimes you need like false nose and eyeglasses, or a little disguise. But, it's almost like, free marketing when you're out there.
Yeah. Hey, Coach Dan. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think just kind of like with the mental wellness kind of perspective, just adding some of these things in there, oftentimes, and one of the hopes that I even have for this podcast is that people who listen in will maybe even find it obnoxiously so, that these patterns tend to keep coexisting over and over together. So one of the things that you were mentioning is just do it, kind of the Nike slogan mentality. If there's something that is of interest to you, the more you just focus on doing the thing that is needed, and doing the thing that is the next obvious step and doing the thing that feels the best to you, act on it. And then sometimes when we get overwhelmed by like our emotions and our doubt and our insecurities, we can listen to them, but oftentimes they're habits of the mind that want us to stay consistent with the experiences we're already accustomed to. And that's what we tend to do. Like our bodies are biologically wired to, in some way, want to maintain what it is just accustomed to doing day to day. And whether or not that even is the best for us, like anything that makes us go out of our comfort zone is naturally going to be harder. And anything that we can't necessarily see a final destination to is going to be naturally harder. And when we know we have interest in it, we know we're passionate about it, we know that we love it, like you're kind of describing, like you love what you're doing. How much did that love of what you're doing have an influence on it not being a negotiable that your business wasn't going to succeed? Like you said, it wasn't even something that was going to, wasn't on the top of your mind because you're just going to keep doing it anyway. How was it that you were so interested in doing this thing that had an impact on you continuing and just feeling like it was just going to happen?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, I feel like I've done things smartly. Like I haven't thrown all the programs I'm currently doing as an option day one. You know what I mean? I think it's just almost like an onion, you need to kind of peel back. And I've always been a firm believer prior to my days doing, the Hoopstars thing is like customer service is super important to me, like delivering a good product, but listening to, I mean, it's all right, it's my program, but you have customers, right? And they're telling you something. So you either ask them directly, surveys or that type of thing, or you just kind of, like I said, I mean, I started my second, my other option, my older program, just because someone had mentioned their child was going to be doing this again. They like it, but it was like, is there anything else? And that was something I didn't think about. So they said something and that's how that phase started. So, I mean, I think, you have to, if you're not listening to what your customers want, you're not going to deliver a good product. And then like, I'm always trying to expand and do something a little different, but I feel like I've always started it on a small, not like I haven't gone all in right off the bat because you need to figure out what's working, what's not working. So as I start new programs, I try to keep them on the smaller side, kind of, work the kinks out, so to speak, and then you can expand it because you can't ever take that back if you do something and it's just, it fails or whatever. So I don't know if that's just I don't know if I'd call that a smart business stance. I think that's just, to me, that's the way I'm wired. Like I want to do something and I want it to be quality. What I struggle with now is like how many kids, I hate turning kids away, but I have no choice. Cause then you have like this, if you have 33-year-olds in a class, I'm sorry, you're just asking for trouble. But typically now, like our programs fill up fairly quickly and we get but we get people on my wait list and it kind of breaks my heart, but I don't, I try and give those people an opportunity when we offer another session of things like that earlier. Cause you're always going to, sorry, let me think what I'm going to say. You're always going to get new customers, but you need to keep or retain your current customers. And that's always been something that's been important to me from my previous days and transferring that over to what I'm doing now. But like I said, I think it's just a matter of trying to do things smartly versus, we're working smarter versus harder, I guess.
Yeah. So you can have the tactics of what you're doing. It's not like you're just blindly throwing yourself into something just because you love it and you're passionate about something. Would you be doing this if you weren't passionate in it just because of the business? If you didn't care about basketball, would you be doing what you're doing? If you didn't like working with children, would you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say the basketball is the one side of the thing. That's, to me, what's great is just is making an impact. We have we're running I started, I guess this will be year 4 in the winter. We do a special needs version of my program. We call it Superstars, and we use a tagline that every child deserves to be a superstar, or hoopstar rather, because some kids, like my son, there's just not a whole lot of opportunities for special needs kid in the area. So there's a little boy here now that last night he told me he was going to dunk on me, and he's in a wheelchair, and that shouldn't matter, but just the fact that he gets to like be normal for that class and talk trash to me, I was like, it's great. He said something the week before that was awesome too. But I mean, it's just, to me, like, we're giving kids a chance to do something, whether they're in our special needs program or they're a regular typical child. And if they fall in love with something that has been such a big part of my life, it's awesome, right? So like, what we have kids now, my OGs, my original kids that are in like 4th and 5th grade, and some of them are still doing we do some older programming. It's not my main focus, although we're trying to expand. But there's kids that I've had with me for like now 5-6 years, and families, and you have the younger brothers and sisters that they come up. And then I'm sure someday, if I'm doing this long enough, those kids that were in my original class in that weird upstairs room at the church, maybe even help working with me, So it's just, I just like making an impact in our community in a positive way. And I feel like we can do that. And then we have a platform to do that, where we can offer things like our Superstars program, or go out to some community events and help with things which we get asked for, or we are asked to do a donation for a raffle or for a school or for the hospital or something like that. Those are things that I'm like, I can't believe that people are actually reaching out to me for that. Or on my left here, we do a couple times a year, just twice a year, we do like a little apparel order. And I just can't believe that people order stuff with our logo on it. It's just like, it like, honestly, like, it blows my mind. Like, I wouldn't think that would have ever happened, but it does. And it's great. We have little car magnets I give out. So that's my other favorite thing, is when I call them Hoopstars in the wild. You just see, someone that I'm like, they actually put it on their car. It's crazy. I mean, I just never would have thought so that would have happened.
Yeah. So you're speaking from like the experience of you a number of years ago, not even that terribly long, you started a business, you're interested in it, you're passionate about it, and you kind of just followed where it went, one step at a time, did the obvious step, continue to do the things that you feel like were necessary, also recognizing the benefits of being organized and having a process for doing whatever that first step was until it led to the next step. So not attempting to go and create 8 different types of businesses at first. Do the first, see how it kind of like goes by ironing out, get feedback, and then you're kind of growing from there, right? So I think those things tend to be like the things, if you're going in and you're doing like these business classes, they'll teach you and tell you those things. I think sometimes the things that are missing in those classes and the community conversation are how it physically, mentally, and emotionally feels to put yourself in a vulnerable space to do it in the first place. So like for you, you're able to reflect on it now. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, that's a golden nugget, like having the opportunity to say, I've been able to go through these processes, and now I can look back and I can also look ahead. And it doesn't seem so dark in the future anymore, because I can see how this could continue to expand. And I have a confidence and competence now, knowing what I'm doing and how that kind of looks like, where there isn't as much stress behind it anymore, because you put yourself through the experience. Is that something that you feel
Sure,
like
yeah.
agreement with?
Yeah. I think probably one of the trickiest thing for an entrepreneur is like if you are used to a 9-to-5 job, it's not a 9-to-5 job. Like my thing is like, I work in the mornings and I'm off like downish now. My son will be home in about a little less than an hour, and then I'm with him. Then I go back into work at night, and then I usually get home from there, eat, spend some time with my family. Then I usually have to do some work. So it's like, it's kind of like, there's peaks and valleys. Like, certain times you're busier than others, but trying to find out like, and not having that quote unquote 8 hours to get your work done. Cause our work day, a lot of it is like, we're present, like we're doing a program or running a class. So it's, it's not like you can sit there and be on, answer emails while you're working at the same time, So I think that's probably another challenge, is to just like find that juggle, like when do you turn off or when do you turn it off? You know what I mean? But I feel like nowadays, I feel like there is no off button for almost anyone. Like everyone, we all were working almost because you can, like with being able to get emails on phones, or, it's just a question if you do answer or not. My struggle is probably is that it's okay not to answer something like immediately. But I feel like people have expect that not expect that, but that's the kind of what I like to, and I've heard that from my families. They like the fact that if they write me, they're going to hear back from me. Sometimes if it's a bigger program, or if it's just you're sending something to info at blah, 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 you may hear back, but it may not be, like, I'm not like talking like, I get the email and boom, answer it 10 seconds later. But I just try, and I feel like people, have come to expect a personal side of things. And that's probably where I struggle, is if you're growing, you don't want to, I don't want to lose that personal touch. Because if I have someone who signs up for a program and I know the family, I usually just write a little something, how's Oscar doing, or say hi to him for me. And I don't know, it's just important to me. And I feel like, and that's who I am. And I feel like that's what I meant before. Like when, you're going to get with me, you're going to get all of me, you know what I mean? And I just feel like that's something that I feel like it's important little touch that as you grow, like, how do you maintain that? So that's probably where I would say I probably struggle. I do have like 2 part-time people with me now that are able to help out with lighting sort of my workload. And that was hard for me to let go of that, but it's definitely been a blessing, because now a lot of the times I'm able just to kind of do my thing and not have to do everything, because I felt like I did have to do everything. It's just a matter of trusting the people who you're working with. And I'm kind of a control freak, and that's something I has been hard to let go, but you're not going to grow unless you let people help you.
Yeah. Learning how to delegate is like, the next frontier, I think, when people are like growing their businesses. And I think too, this is something I do in some of my work, is helping people recognize that they can maybe have that adaptation of, how do I maintain a personal touch and have healthy work-life boundaries, right? So as I'm adapting to my business in whatever age and stage it is in, how do I also adapt in my life with healthy life, family, and, career balance, knowing that as one thing is evolving, that will also benefit from an evolution as well. But I think that in our culture today, and because of the accessibility of being able to have connection, it is kind of like one of those things of I have an emotional urge to provide something, and that tends to then be the behavior, right? So like, oh, I'm so comfortable just like connecting with this person, I'll just do it right now. And then I'll just do it again just right now. And again and again and again. It's like, oh, now it's like 11:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning.
And then you get careless. Then you have typos and you're sending the wrong stuff. And so that's the thing. You have to shut it off at some point. Or like I said, Jess, who helps me in the morning, like in the beginning, like we were both sending the same emails to people, because I knew she was going to do it, but I didn't know she was going to do it, because like, it's just a matter of and just because you've done something a certain way for, since you started, doesn't mean it's okay if someone does it a little bit differently. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
But you also have to, like I said, I mean, it's now it's funny. Like now, some of the things she does in the morning, I just show up and I just run the class. Like I don't even know where some of the classrooms are, where's all that stuff. It's almost like when you are married, like you're single and you're at the grocery store and you're perfectly fine. But now when I go to the grocery store, I can't find anything, because I don't really go to the store that often. So it's just nice to have like someone like, help around. And just like I said, you can't grow unless you let people, find good quality people and let them help you. So
yeah, I think that's really important. Well, where we are with like time, I think I'll just kind of make some of these, fundamental connections. So you became aware that certain things in 9-to-5 jobs, especially living in like New Jersey, were not necessarily working for you and your family. You took that information and recognizing those discomforts, and you adapted your life and decided to try something new. You figured out that was working fairly well. And then with life circumstances and your child's needs, adaptation was required again. Things weren't working for you. This is what you like to do. You had a background in basketball and trainings, a partner that saw your passion and your interest and saying, hey, let's take a leap of faith and let's see if this is something that can just work out. Let's work on it together. So having someone that also had that awareness that you're both on the same page, same kind of insight of these are the things that we're both struggling with. This is what we're struggling with as a family. And having conversations about that insight and deciding how to proceed rather than just like lingering over and over again, year in, year out in that kind of pain, right? So sometimes things come to a point of like, something's got to give, something's got to change.
I was just about to say that something had to give. Yeah. And it was like I said, I had the flexibility to maybe find something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like I said, I didn't know this was going to happen, but like I said, I mean, professionally, it's been the best thing that's happened to me. Personally, obviously it's an ups and downs with struggles with my son, but we are getting there. I had to keep reminding myself, like, this happened. The whole point of doing this was to be the care for him. And that's another struggle, is just making sure I remember that and don't take too much on. Mm-hmm. But that's where as things grow, that's where the trick is, to keep that balance. You're running.
It becomes bigger. You have a river now.
Right.
And then
right.
You learn, like, not go so fast down the current and kind of paddle upstream a little bit to find that new balance. Yeah. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something else with that? No.
But like when you have help, you can, like, they can cover for you when things are like before. Like if something went going on with my son, like I had to like just cancel or reschedule or whatever. But now, between my help that I have in the morning and evenings, if something happens, I'm fortunate where they can cover for me, and it's allowed the show to go on, so to speak, while I deal with what I have to deal with. And it's nice that both of my help staff that are with me are aware of that and are willing to step in and help me, because without that, you can't keep starting and stopping things. You're just going to lose people because it's too addictive.
But I think what's important with that too, and why you're kind of shedding light on, is that you're living based on your values. And so these are things that you value. Family is something that you value. And so you're creating something that also allows you to focus on the value of family, the value of having the time that you want and you need, and recognizing that our human condition doesn't mean that like all those things are just obvious and easy to do all the time. It's constantly like, is it this or this? What are the pros of this? What are the cons of this? And that, just kind of normalizing that it doesn't, although we can talk about it like it as if it is obvious, going through the motions of it is not always so obvious. But the more that we can live more authentically, I know you were kind of shedding light on that too, authentically to our personal values and the things that are important to us, like those foundations of what are important in our human experience, we keep getting rewards in our lives by making those kind of front and center, because what we put out there is also what we end up receiving. So through that awareness and through that insight, you have allowed yourself to have a deeper connection with yourself, your family, and your community. And how do you feel like this has led to you having meaningful, purposeful living and activities?
Well, the first thing I'd say is you just have to try and is win the day. Like oftentimes, like, we have a roller coaster a lot in our house. And even if yesterday, for example, my son walked down to his classroom himself and went in the classroom all by himself, and that may seem not like a big deal to some people, but it was huge. So whatever happened that day, it was going to be a good day for me. If something happens, and if you're having a bad day or we're having a bad day, sometimes I just throw it out to the side and be like, all right, today is what it was, but tomorrow we're going to win the day. You have to think of it that way. Otherwise, it's just, you're creating a pattern that you almost can't get out of. So that would be something I like to I live by. The other thing I like to say from a business side of thing is, obviously with me, is you don't know what you don't know. So I really had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. I mean, I knew what I was doing, what I could do basketball side, but business wise, I just made mistake after mistake after mistake. Like, it took me like 6 times to send an invoice to the state college after school because I didn't. And they kept writing back to me, no, you have to do it this way. And I wasn't understanding them. But now when I do an invoice, it just makes me laugh because I remember like thinking like this man's incompetent. You know what I mean? But the other thing is, like, there's always an answer. It's there. You have to find it. So even if you don't know what it is, it's there. And that'll help you sort of have success in whatever you're choosing to do. So those are 3 things, I guess, that I like to live by. And for me, like I said, I tend to be a positive person. Obviously there's days where, you just have a bad day, but like I said, if you can't let that go and throw it out, and I call them outliers, and then just tomorrow it has to be better. It just has to be.
Yeah. But taking that step, saying, I'm a part of making that better. You're kind of like putting in that space of, that's an outlier. It doesn't mean that it is necessarily the plot of everything that's going on right now. It
doesn't define who I am or what's going on.
Right. You learn from it, you move on, and then you continue, and let's see what's going to unfold in the next day. And I'm going to think about it more optimistically than not. So,
and when you get to work with, when you get to work with 3 to 5 year olds and slightly older, you can't not help, generally speaking, without leaving that environment without a smile on your face, because you're going to hear something unique and different every day. And in fact, I probably should write a book at some point, because I have a lot of good stories. So.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. So I know you shed light on your fundamentals and sharing those with everyone so they can attempt to apply those to their lives. And also you did also discuss there's always an answer. You just have to find it. So anything else that you'd like to share about your quote?
No, like I just said earlier, like cliches, but you can't take no for an answer. I mean, from a business side of things. But like I said, I tend to always be like a glasses half full type of person in my own personal life. We have, in my own situation with my son, we have a challenging situation. I'm not going to lie, but, there are other families that are dealing with worse and other situations. But you just have to, between looking, finding that answer and just being positive and trying to win every day as many as you possibly can. If you can do that, you're going to be successful, and personally and professionally. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for being with us today and sharing, your fundamentals and your experience. And I think being able to kind of talk about the importance of this connection that we have with ourselves, allowing ourselves to recognize that there's challenges in life and we can focus on moving forward, even if we don't have all the answers, and just doing the best that we can and keep showing up and keep doing that, whether it's starting a business or just doing something that is highly valuable to us and connects to our hobbies or interests. It doesn't have to be a job, but how are we listening authentically to our interests and, again, our family needs and our wants, and attempting to live through that and just seeing what happens when we give that a chance, and making some planning as we're doing it too, and not just kind of, throwing everything out. We'll give you both. Right. So thank you again for joining us today, and take care.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast. I hope this episode gave you some valuable tools and helped you feel more connected to yourself and others. Get more life, family, and career fundamentals when you follow Know Your Fundamentals on social media, including Instagram and YouTube. You can also join the Fundamentals Life, Family, and Career Wellness Facebook group. There you'll get access to live trainings, helpful resources, Q&As with our guests, and professional mom community that's here to support you in thriving your way. I'm cheering you on, and I hope to hear from you soon.